Hey guys, Chris Dick here. So today I'm going to show you how to build a fully distributed Hadoop cluster. In this example, I'm going to be working off a set of Azure virtual machines in a cluster in that Azure cloud, and I often will just generically refer to that as a cloud provider. You can use Amazon, GCP, Azure. It really doesn't make any difference which one you're going for because they will all work very similar to each other. I'm connecting through a Windows client on a laptop here, and currently I have a name node configured that is fully working as a single node cluster. If you watched my last video in this series, you saw me set up the Hadoop as a single node cluster. Now, if we move forward, we'll start to talk about some of the changes that we're going to be making. In particular, we have to do some configuration on the name node, and then we synchronize that configuration across all of our data nodes. So what we have is a masters and workers file, and the masters file in particular will control what masters are going to be managing the cluster. In other words, we have a name node and a secondary name node. And then we have our workers, and our workers are going to be our data nodes. So sometimes what I've done is I've often had the name node as a solitary machine, and then I have one of the data nodes will also be a secondary name node, and they can kind of keep each other backed up like that. So or you can create a whole dedicated secondary name node, and oftentimes that dedicated secondary name node is a really smart idea if you're building a production machine. There are also a few configuration files in Hadoop. These are the ones that we've edited before during our single node cluster setup. We also have some SSH configuration files that must be copied over, and then our big data SH environment variables. So all those files have to be configured and copied over or synchronized across our data nodes. So if we look at some of the things that must be copied, we have our SSH, our environment variables. We also have some environment setup to do on the data nodes, and we'll do that as well. Fortunately, when we install these software packages, they're fairly quick and easy to install when we use a few chained commands. But the actual environment variables, they come directly from the name node, so we'll be synchronizing them over. And then we also have our Hadoop configuration files. Okay. Now, one of the things I often say here, I just make note of this, the Hadoop configuration, what I will often do is just copy the entire Hadoop directory over to the data nodes and then keep them synchronized. I found this has been a good approach. It hasn't caused me any challenges. It's worthwhile doing it like that, and that way you always know that you've got exactly the same configuration on every node. So let's get started here. The first thing we want to do is create the masters file. Now this is fairly simple to do. What we are going to do in this case is we're going to make our name node our primary master, so that'll be the first one in this list, and then the secondary name node will be our data node 1. Okay. Now, right now, these are just references. They're not doing anything yet. They're just simply information that's going into the file. So just like a lot of other commands that I do, I will create this echo command that will push the information directly into the masters file for you. So we can copy that and then go into a PuTTY session. And I think I've already got one over here. Yes, I do. I'm just going to make that a little larger. And if I push that into the masters file, I should be able to cat the masters file. Let's just do a little copy here. And there we have it. So it looks exactly like we're expecting. We had a name node and data node 01. All right. So that's our first thing down. Next thing we have to do is set the permissions on the master's file, because when it went in, we used a sudo command, so it will automatically make it a root. So root owned, so we want to make it owned by Ubuntu. Okay, and we'll set the permissions as well. Now going forward, we'll go into the workers file. Now the workers file, as I mentioned, is a set of data nodes. So currently, I'm assuming that we only have one data node, but as I mentioned before, I have two data nodes. So I'm going to put both of those in here. And all I have to do is this, just copy this command here. And it'll do the same thing that we did with the master's file, but I'm going to have to modify this one for the second edition. So I'm going to push that into the workers, and then I'm going to cursor up and then change the entry here to data node 2. And if I cat that, I can very easily get what I have in there. So I have local host, data node 1, and data node 2. Now that local host is totally unnecessary, so I'm going to edit that in Nano and just get rid of it right now. If you like, you could just remove the worker file and that'll work just fine. So let's edit this in Nano, and we'll just take away localhost, and there we have it. Okay, so Control S, Control X to exit that, and again, let's just tell us what we have there, make sure that we actually have it. So we have data node 1, data node 2. Okay, so let's move a little further ahead. There's a couple changes to make in the core site, and they're minor changes, just changing where I have a property that says this name node, and now we're going to call it name node, and it was localhost before. So we'll just copy that command, go there, and let's go right down to this line right here. Okay, so we have name node. Good. Control S, Control X, we're out of there now. And we'll change the HDFS site. And now this one in particular, we're going to change the replication factor. This replication factor essentially says how many blocks do I want to create when I'm storing a file across my nodes. And in this case, I now have 3 nodes, so I can store it at least on 3 machines that I have in there in the cluster. So I'm going to set that number to 3. So if you have a larger cluster, you can have more numbers. What this means is essentially it's like kind of like how many copies do you want to create of a file for redundancy, and usually 3 is pretty reasonable, I've found. So let's go into the HDFS through Nano. And we'll go down here, change that 1 to 3, Control S for save, Control X to exit. All right, now the next thing that we have to do is if you happen to have your node running right now, you want to stop it. I don't think that mine is running. If I just do a JPS here, it should be empty. So I have no Java processes running. So what we're going to be doing here is just following this diagram essentially. So we're going to be copying the masters, copying the configuration, the SSH files over, and then our environmental variables as well. So in order to do this, I can use a secure copy, and it should be fairly straightforward to do. It's going to ask me for an RSA fingerprint, and then I can just accept that. So let's just go ahead and give it a try. We're going to do this for both nodes at once because I have 2 nodes. So we have that. I say yes. Okay. And there we have it. We now have our config and Hadoop key pair copied over to data node 1. And we'll just go ahead and do data node 2 at the same time. I say yes to that. Now, there's actually a fast ways so you can eliminate these things using a key scan. I will often do that. I'll just show you the command, what that command looks like. If you wanted to essentially make it quick, you could automatically add these keys to your known hosts, and that way it wouldn't ask you those questions. So, but we're going to go the long way for this time. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is log into or through SSH. I'm going to do that into data node 1, and we'll just get into that. And we're going to run a few commands. This one will remove unattended updates, perform an update and upgrade, and install Java, install PDSH, and then install RS or rsync. Okay, so we're going to run all of that in one command line here. Okay, now to speed things up, I'm going to start another SSH session with my data node 2, because right now I'm SSH'd into data node 1. And because I have to do exactly the same thing, it makes sense to continue that. And you can see here, this is actually data node 2. You can see here is our files that we copied over. Okay, I'm going to run that command on data node 2. This is the one we copied out of the lesson, and we'll run that now. And let's just look at what's happening on data node 1. Okay, get data node 2 up here while it's running its stuff. Good. So we know that we're installing both of these features. By the time we're done, we should have all of these features fully installed and ready to go. The next step, let's just take a look at what we're going to do next. The next step, we're going to be exiting out of the data node, and then we're going to be performing a few functions remotely on each of those nodes, because if we do it remotely, it'll be a little easier rather than copying and pasting new commands every time. So let's see how we are here. Looks like we're done on data node 1, so I'm going to exit out of that, which brings me back to name node. Okay, and it says that we are now going to create a Hadoop directory on our data node. So if it doesn't exist already, we want to create this. All right, and the reason is that the rsync doesn't seem to like when a directory doesn't exist. There's probably some way around it, but I found this has been quite helpful. So I'm going to copy this command to make a directory on data node 1. Okay, and you can see it's gone off and done that without errors, and I'm going to do the same on data node 2. Okay, and just to see that that worked, we'll go over to the Hadoop folder. So this is the new one that I've just created. It doesn't have anything in it, and we will continue to add our features to that. Next thing, we'll take ownership of that new directory, and we'll do data node 1 first, and then data node 2 second. Okay. And then we are going to give it permissions, and this is just simply data node 1, data node 2. Okay, and you might have seen as I flipped over to this little file here, this script file is something that I sort of build up over time. So if something ever needs to, if I ever need to just, obliterate a machine and start it from scratch, I often build a script file kind of like this. Now your file might be very different, but you'll find that if you copy all of the commands out of this lesson, your file will be very similar to mine. And I've just made some slight modifications over time too. Okay, so now we have our directories. If I look at my Hadoop, you'll see the owner and group will change. Okay, oops, maybe not. Let's just see. We'll go back over here. Yes, there we are. So Ubuntu and Ubuntu is the owner and group. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we will copy over the big data sh file. That's all of our environment variables. So we'll copy that command and go over to our name node putty session. Okay, we'll run that. So that's done it on name node or data node 1, and then we'll do the same for data node 2. Very good. All right. And then we're going to copy, let's see. This one is actually going to add the data node to workers. Okay. But this time we don't have to do that because we've already done this. This actual lesson is about adding a node to your Hadoop cluster. So if you've already got it in there, you don't have to add it twice. Okay, so just to avoid that, if that makes sense, I may make an appendix on that one and add a little note there. So we don't have to run that line. If you recall, our big data sh file as well would have an export for the data node DNS, okay? And when we set it up originally, let's just go over there and I'll show you what that looks like. And where are we here? Profile D. If I go to my big data sh, this set of commands that we're doing in the website here, they are setting up those sections of the big data. That's all this is doing. So if it's already in there, you don't need to do it twice. Okay. Otherwise, you'll just have something appended to the end of the file, and nothing wrong with that. It just gets overwritten as it ends up at that line, but you don't have to double your work. Okay. And the next thing that I like to do is because I like to sort of start fresh at this stage. I do like to delete the log files from my name node. So that way, when I go to the to run this and set it up, my log files aren't in the way, and it tells me that I've already removed them. So there's nothing there anyhow. Then let's see. Now the next thing we're going to do is rsync from we're going to take all of the Hadoop Hadoop home folder, and this is a synchronization of the directories. So we're going to take the Hadoop home directory and copy it over to our USR local. And because of the way this is structured, it already says I'm taking the Hadoop directory and I'm putting it into the Hadoop directory that we just created earlier into the USR local. And you'll see what I mean when I say that. So let's copy this and we're going to run that. Okay, so you see it's running right now. So what I'm going to do now is, because I kind of want to have two sessions, two putty sessions running, I'm just going to do this for data node 2 at the same time. So we'll just get that going. And we should be good there. Yep. So far, so good. Let's see our progress. Looks like the data node 1 is already finished. Let's look at our next steps. So now it's saying that we need to reboot the data nodes. So in this case, we'll start off with data node 1. And where is that? Right here. That's our original. So we'll just restart data node 1. Okay, and then we're going to restart data node 2, but before we do that, let's make sure that our copy is done, and it looks like it's done. I'm just going to exit out of that putty session, and we'll do a restart on that. Okay, that's good. We know that it worked because this putty error came up here on the data node 2, so we know that we're rebooting. Okay, and if everything went well, we should be able to start our HDFS. And again, if your HDFS happens to be running, stop the HDFS or HDFS, and then you can restart it from this point. Now, you might require a reformat, but we'll find out what it does for us here at the end. Okay, so we're starting our data nodes. So far we're doing okay. And if all went well, we should be able to browse to our name node. Now, there's a couple other steps, and I'm going to show you them in a moment, but let's go the long route to just access my name node. Okay, so far so good. We have 2 live nodes, and let's see, we have a data node and data node, very good. So that means our 2 data nodes are working just fine. That's wonderful. And because we don't have the name node as a data node anymore, whereas before we've done that in previous, we now have 2 live data nodes, and I know that they work. Now, the one thing that I've talked about before is this little tricky issue is if I click on here, it gives me an error. And the reason is because our local client doesn't know what this DNS relates to. Okay, so the next step, and we've done this before, so if you have any questions about this, you can watch my videos on modifying the Windows hosts file. So I'm going to log in using my administrator password. So now I can go into that file, and if you recall, it's over in this directory here. I have to load up all files and then look for hosts. So you see I already have an entry here for my name node, and that corresponds to this IP address right here. So now if I want my my data node 1 to be correct, if we go back over to our instructions, it says our entry should look something like this. Okay, so let's go back over to our host file, paste that in, we'll get our IP address, and if you want to take the copy route, you can just go like that. Go back over here and paste our IP address, and we're making two entries here. There we go, 1 and 2. There we have it, and we'll make sure that we have the IP address, and that's the public IP address as well, so you want to make sure it's the public IP address. And we'll paste it right there. Okay, now we'll save that file, close it up, and now you're going to see that if I click here and refresh, it knows where that data node is. And if I go over here, it will know the same thing about our data node 2. So this tells us a lot of information about the data node itself, and we can understand where files are saved. Currently, it's all the data is saved in a temp file. And if we go over to that temp file, you'll see where that is. It is right here. Okay. There we have Hadoop Ubuntu, DFS, data, name, secondary name node, the data area is right here as well. So lots of information about the HDFS itself is there. What else can I tell you? The next thing that you'd like to be able to do is let's go back to our name node configuration. The next thing that you should be able to do is do some management of the file system. So I should be able to throw a file up there. Let's just throw something simple up here. We'll upload that file, and if all went well, we should be able to see our file sitting there in our data warehouse and on our HDFS. So you should be able to create folders here. You can delete files. So if I delete that file, I can do that. If I want to upload it and download that file from here, so I should be able to do that as well. So if I click here, click on download, we can put that file wherever we like. Just put it in my downloads folder, right? Now, this is also telling us some information about the files too. That one file is copied twice. Okay, so it's on two data nodes. So it's on the data node 1 and data node 2. Okay, great. All right. Now, what else is it telling us to do? I think that's all we have to do to make this work. Now, you can go ahead and test your HDFS to your heart's content. What I would suggest at this point is just doing some checks on the file system here. Do the report that tells you what your file system is doing, perhaps. We can load that up, and it will tell us a little bit of information. It says we have 2 live data nodes. It tells us where the IP address is, where the DNS for those nodes are. It'll tell us how much space is used as well. So everything that you need to know is right here, but you can also have a nice view of it in this area too. All right, so we now have a fully functional fully distributed mode cluster. And that's pretty cool because now if I want to add more nodes, I don't have to do any more name node configurations. All I have to do now is just add a node. Okay, so if you're trying to set up another one, you can just set up one more virtual machine. Let's call it data node 3, and you follow these instructions right here, and it will guide you through all of the process of setting that up. It's pretty straightforward and really easy to do. All right, guys, thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful. I've got lots of videos on my YouTube channel that are very relational to this, so I hope they're helping you too. Thanks a lot. Remember to like and share, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.